everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Shawna Patterson and today I actually have some very exciting news. I have officially passed the NCIDQ Interior Design Exams. I am so excited. For any of you guys in the interior design industry who have ever looked into these exams or are planning on taking them or have taken them, you know what an intense process it is and just what an accomplishment it can mean that now you're certified NCIDQ. And for those who don't know what NCIDQ means, it is the Council for Interior Design Qualification. So that governs all of North America, including Canada and the United States. And there's a lot of different qualifications that you have to hit in order to be eligible to write the exams, and there's 3 different exam series that you have to do to complete it to get your entire certification. So now I have my little certificate up on the wall in my office. So I'm going to go over all the things I used to prepare for the exams, all the study materials that I used, as well as my study schedule, as just an overview on how I prepared for the NCIDQ to maybe answer some of your questions if you're planning on writing the exams, or maybe you're just researching into it for the future, or maybe you're about to write them tomorrow. I know. So for all my fellow interior designers out there or interested in the career, I hope that this helps. So first I'm going to go over what I did to pass the NCIDQ exams, and then I'm going to jump on into my study schedule. So once you have all your work experience, you are qualified to write your first IDFX exam, which you can write while you're still in school. I didn't. I waited till after I was graduated, and I had worked in the field for a few years. However, there are ways that you can write it while you are still in school because you don't need the full work experience hours in order to be eligible to write the IDFX. I got my entire work experience hours, all of the forms that you need to fill out in order to apply. I applied, got accepted, bought the package of 3 exams to write all at one time. You can buy them individually, but I think it's a little bit cheaper if you buy them as a group package. So that's what I did because I felt that the biggest #1 thing is to gain experience. And I think that's ultimately really benefited me when I was writing the exams, is having all the working experience that I did, because I felt that the exam really captured real life work experience as well as a lot of knowledge areas which you can gain from a textbook. It gets more ingrained in your brain because it's second nature to you because you do it every day for work. So that's why I think that gaining experience in the workplace is a big plus before you go to write the exams. The next way that I prepared for the exams was really making sure that I was familiar with working drawings. So that includes equipment plans, furniture plans, interior elevations, sections, how to do details, reflected ceiling plans, and also understanding how to read mechanical and electrical plans. And it's also helpful to understand, say, millwork shop drawings. Maybe your interior design firm doesn't detail out all the individual millwork. They hire a separate vendor to do the millwork drawing, but then you as an interior designer would check those millwork shop drawings to be familiar with that. So I think that was also a good way to prepare for the exam, to be able to familiarize yourself of how you would break down a section cut of a cabinet. Luckily enough, at my firm, we produce all the working drawings in-house, so there was a period of time where I was physically drawing all of the working drawings, so that gained a lot of experience and understanding of how working drawings were put together. So that part of the exam I was able to just fly through because it was something that I was really familiar with. So I know a really common thing that people do, and what I did as well, is I bought the David Ballast Interior Design Reference Manual, and I read that thing front to back twice. And I know reading textbooks is maybe not the most interesting thing, just full of lots of information that's really applicable to the NCIDQ exam. I definitely found that it taught me more things than I learned in school. And say if you haven't recently graduated and you've been working in the industry for a while, it's a good way to refresh your memory and really bring up to speed all the items that you could potentially be tested for on the exam. So I definitely recommend reading that book. Another thing that I did was I signed up for an online website called Practice. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. It was just something that I had discovered and it looked like a good idea. It's essentially a subscription-based service where you can sign up month to month, or you can do a series of 6 months or a year, and you can use that platform to test yourself. And I used the portion of the website where you could just do the quizzes because I felt the quizzes were the most important part, and probably one of the things that I honestly think really helped me to pass the exams. It made a world of a difference doing all the quizzes that I did on the Practice website. It's one thing to read a textbook, but then to actually go back and have someone ask you you the questions, you know, refreshing things that you learned. And it was something that I found really benefited me in the long run. So those were the items that I used to prepare myself for the NCIDQ exam. Now I'm gonna jump into my study schedule so you guys can see exactly what I did to prepare for the exams. So let's just jump back all the way to the beginning. Before I had written any of the exams, I had applied for everything, got accepted, was eligible to write the exams. I knew I wanted to write the first exam in April, so around November the previous year, I researched how to get my hands on the David Ballast Interior Design Reference Manual book so that I would arrive in time for me to start studying in the new year. Being from Canada, I actually found that websites that were selling the textbook were terrible exchange rate prices. I actually looked on Amazon and I found a secondhand used copy of the textbook that was being sold on Amazon through other third parties. Ended up picking that book. Check ways that you can find a used copy, whether that's buying something on secondhand websites or perhaps check your public libraries to see if they have a copy of the book, or maybe you can request that they bring one in and then just rent it out. Personally, as long as I could read the words on the page, it didn't really matter to me what kind of condition the book was in. I would just rather save money. So even though the IDFX exam only tests on a portion of the content in that textbook, I decided to read the entire textbook front to back just to get a broader knowledge of everything that it captured. I created a schedule in my Apple Calendar and I gave myself a few days to read each of the chapters because a lot of the time, you know, life is unexpected and you don't always have time to read the chapters, or something comes up and you don't feel like studying that day. So I felt that using the Apple Calendar is something that I use on a daily basis, and you can create a separate calendar within the calendar so you can toggle between the two and really map out all the chapters that you're reading and just give yourself a few days for each one. And you can drag and drop them to different dates if, you know, unexpected things come up and you weren't able to read the chapter that day, because life happens, right? So I found that that was a really good way for me to keep on a schedule. And my calendar is synced up with all my devices, all my Apple devices, so I can see it and edit it wherever I am on the go. I started reading the textbook front to back at the beginning of January, and I made my schedule so that I would be finished reading the entire textbook about a month before I was scheduled to write my IDFX exam in April. A month before I was scheduled to write my exam, I signed up for the Q Practice monthly access, so I just did a month to month, and then once the month was over, I canceled the subscription. I just got the basic subscription that just got you access to the quizzes, and I would take the quizzes on my phone when I was commuting to and from work on public transit, which was really nice because it gave me a designated study period, because I knew that once I got home I was not going to want to study. Milo has joined us over here. He wanted to check out what we're doing. On the day of the IDFX exam, it was my first time writing any of the exams. I was really nervous, as probably I'm sure a lot of people are, because it was just the fear of the unknown. I know, it was stressful. Not knowing what to expect, never written the exams before, I didn't know really how to test it. That's kind of why I felt that doing the quizzes was really helpful, because that is how the IDFX and the IDPX exams are graded. It's all multiple choice for the time being. You could do like half-length tests and you could do full-length tests to really gauge where you're at and see the areas that you need to improve on. And honestly, writing the IDFX exam, it was super intense. Like, not gonna lie, I'm not sugarcoating it. You know, you have cameras watching you as you're in the test centers, and it's just kind of nerve-wracking, honestly. And after leaving the test facility, I was just really mentally exhausted. Definitely don't schedule anything for that day. Just take it easy. Maybe go out and have a dinner or something. I think I finished the exam with about 20 or 30 minutes left on the clock. I had technically finished the exam earlier than that, but I left myself a good chunk of time after I was finished answering all the questions to go back and review all the questions afterward, because you're able to flag any of the multiple choice questions and go back to them at the end of the exam before you submit it. So my tips for the IDFX and IDPX exam is, if there's any multiple choice questions that you are not 100% absolutely certain on, choose the best response that you think is correct, flag the question, and then go back to that at the end if you have time. Because if you're unsure of it and you leave the question blank, you're 100% gonna get a 0. But if you at least choose an answer, like one of the 4 answers, then you have a 25% chance that it could be correct. So after I finished writing the IDFX exam, they email you within, I'd say 15 minutes, I received an email with my score. So they do email you your preliminary score for the IDFX and the IDPX currently. So you get to see within 15 minutes after you submit your exam on the computer whether or not you passed. I have heard of people that scores have changed a few points from the time they got their preliminary score to when their actual finalized scores are released in a few weeks time. But from what I've heard, they're usually not affected that much. So usually your preliminary score is a pretty good indicator on whether or not you've passed or failed the exam. So after I wrote the IDFX exam and I passed it the first time, I decided to write the IDPX and the PRAC exams in October of the same year. So you can only write the exams in 2 exam windows, once in the spring and once in the fall. That's the only time that they sit for those exams currently. And I decided to break up the exams. I wanted to do the IDFX exam first because that's the one people say is the easiest, and you can do that one while you're still in school. And I just wanted to do that one first, just as kind of like a tester almost. You know, if I didn't pass it, I didn't want to set myself up for extreme failure. I was just really worried, and I thought it would be best to just get the first one out of the way, see how it was, and then gauge where I wanted to go from there. I didn't want to go all in and write all the exams at the same time in case I just bombed the IDFX and I didn't pass it. I didn't want to have to be scrambling, you know, to study harder for the next 2 exams. I just wanted to give myself that experience of the first one and then do the other 2 at a later time. So in August of that year, I started the whole study process over again for the IDPX and the practical exam. I read the textbook front to back again, created a similar chapter study schedule on my Apple calendar. I was busy trying to sort out some real estate decisions because my boyfriend and I were in the market to buy a house, and my brother's wedding was also coming up at the same time, and I was helping them on the side to prepare for the wedding and like do decor for them, and all of that was taking place right before the exams in September and it was a lot. So creating that study schedule was critical. So I finished reading the textbook again front to back by middle of September, and then I signed up for Q practice again. I wrote the IDPX at the beginning of October and wrote the PRAC exam 2 weeks later at the end of October. So that gave me 2 weeks of Q practice quiz testing for the IDPX exam, and then once I was finished writing that one, I used 2 weeks of the Q practice quizzing for the PRAC exam. I also made sure to read over and study the NCIDQ exam code. It's a PDF that you can download from the website, and that gives you all the codes that they're going to be testing you on the exam, which is also available when you're taking the PRAC exam. It's in a little tab that you can open up as well. A lot of the building codes vary from state to province to country, so they give you a specific set of code for the exam. I did find the IDFX to be the easiest of the exams and the IDPX to be the hardest. The practical exam I felt was very rushed. I literally had to time every question and section down to the minute or else I wouldn't have finished the exam. You really only have a short amount of time to answer each question on the practical exam, and a lot of the questions take a long time to answer. Some of them have multiple tabs and you have to open different windows, bring up the lighting plans and have to review it and then close them and try to answer the question or keep flipping between the 2 to see some information that's on other tabs. So I found that those longer questions would eat up a lot of the time, which resulted in me having to fly through some of the multiple choice ones. So the practical exam, when I wrote it, was broken up into 3 different sections, and once you finish answering all the questions in a single section, you have to submit that section. You can't go back to it at the end of the exam. 0 time to review any of the questions. I knew going into it how much time I was allotted for the exam, so I split that into 3. It's not like one section's not usually harder than the other. So I found that once I submitted the first section, I had used up all the time, if not more, so I knew that for the other sections I had to rush even more, so I just had to select an answer, submit it, and move on. By the end of the practical exam, I was just racing to answer all of the questions to at least finish everything, so all of them had a submitted answer, because honestly I was scrambling. That's how rushed I felt. I found the practical exam was really hard in the fact that you could have known the material that you were being tested on, but you were so rushed that you didn't really have time to properly analyze the question and really be able to solve it to the best of your ability. So overall, I found that splitting up all the exams worked for me, and I passed them all on the first try. You don't get your practical exam marks until a few weeks after you write it, so that by the time the end of October exam window was finished, I had to wait 6 to 8 weeks from then. So I didn't end up getting my exam results until mid-December. And I remember I was waking up in the Philippines, where I went on vacation in December, to reading the email basically saying, congrats, you passed all your NCIDQ exams and you're now NCIDQ certified. kind of a really neat feeling to wake up and just get that email. I was so excited. So if any of you guys watching have any other further questions or comments, make sure to leave it on this video. And I wish all of you who are in the middle of writing your exams or are planning on writing the NCIDQ exams in the future really the best of luck, and I hope you all are successful. That is the end of the video. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos. I post lots about interior design, fashion, and travel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!